안녕하세요.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to serve as the moderator. Starting off, Sharing City Forum session number 2. I am a full-time researcher at SNU Center for Asian Urban Studies, and will now begin this session on strategy for Sharing City to enhance resilience in the COVID-19 era. My name is Seowon Lee. Today we are a gathering of researchers from home and abroad, activists and government officials to discuss the theme of sharing in the commons, to discuss global collaboration between sharing cities around the world. Not only will we be able to share our experiences, but this will be the starting point for practical global collaboration going forward. We're very happy to have Mr. Neil Gollenflow, the co-founder of Shareable, to serve as the moderator for the Global Forum. Of course, he's a very well-known activist in the field of sharing city and sharing economy. Please welcome Mr. Neil Gollenflow.
Yes, thank you, Lee Sin-wan, and hello, everybody, and welcome to the panel, the era of coronavirus, sharing city strategy that strengthens city resilience, and as part of Seoul Innovation Week 2020. I'm Neil Gollenflow. I'll moderate this session. It's a 2-hour session, and the focus is on, as Lee Sin-wan said, how sharing cities can collaborate to meet COVID-19, all the challenges. Just a little about me. I'm executive director of Shareable, an NGO with a mission to empower communities to share. And we're most known for our solutions journalism on sharing solutions from all over the world and to helping to start the Sharing Cities movement. And for our book, Sharing Cities, Activating the Urban Commons, which you can get a free copy. I'll drop the link in the chat. I'm very honored to moderate such an important conversation with the world's leading experts. And I say important because the time is right for sharing cities as a global movement to take center stage as the seriousness of the crises we face, from COVID-19 to climate change to poverty, et cetera, require transformational solutions, systemic solutions that leverage human, social, and physical capital in new ways. And sharing is such a solution. Take car sharing. The largest study in North America showed that one shared car replaced up to 13 owned cars, and around half of new members got access to a car who didn't previously have access before. Another study showed that a city could keep around $1 billion annually in the local economy for every 150,000 cars taken off the road. So this is the kind of practical magic of sharing. You can dramatically reduce resource consumption, increase access to resources, and strengthen the local economy simultaneously. At least that's the potential. And now imagine a whole economy that runs on this basis in cities where density, shared infrastructure, and common cause provide an ideal foundation for a real sharing economy. And this is why I believe the potential of sharing cities is abundance for all within Earth's limits. But much needs to be done to realize this potential. We've only gotten started. The movement's just 10 years old. One of the best places or ways to accelerate or increase impact is for the sharing cities to collaborate and help each other. So from Seoul to Amsterdam to Barcelona and more can work together to help bring this practical vision to life. So we have an ideal group to discuss this, all leaders in the Sharing Cities movement or other fields, many that I'm very privileged to know well. Some of us have been working together for years. And in fact, these individuals, all of us, are in the process of co-writing a proposal for cooperation between sharing cities that cities, researchers, and activists can act on. And this discussion is part of that proposal development process. So some of you are dropping into a process that's live and ongoing and can also help us along. So we're all in a way coming together to make history together. So we've organized this discussion in 3 segments, the first of which will be 4 10-minute pre-recorded presentations. This will be followed by commentary on the presentations by 4 discussants. Okay, each of those will be 10 minutes each as well. And then we'll close with a 30-minute Q&A session that includes both discussants and the Social Innovation Week general audience. Anyone can submit questions in the chat at any time. We'll get to them during the Q&A session towards the end of our time together. And now let's kick off this discussion with the 4 pre-recorded presentations. But I want to just introduce our presenters real quick. They include Alvaro Porro, a member of Barcelona City Council and Commissioner of Social Economy, Local Development, and Food Policies for Barcelona. We have Oksana Mott, professor at Lund University, and also her co-presenter, Yulia Palgan, an associate professor also from Lund. They're both leaders of the Urban Sharing Research Project at Lund. We have Harman van Sprang, co-founder of the Sharing Cities Alliance, Share Netherlands, and Amsterdam Sharing City. He also serves on the International Advisory Board of Sharing City Seoul. And our first presentation today is by my friend Lee Seung-Wan, as he said, full-time researcher at Seoul National University, and one of the main organizers of this session. So we will start with that presentation.
예, 감사합니다.
Thank you.
제가 또 첫 번째 발표를 맡게 됐습니다.
Good
다시 한번 제
evening. I am the
소개를
first
드리겠습니다. 저는
presenter
서울대학교 아시아
of this
도시사회센터
session.
센터 전임
I am Lee
연구원이고
Seung-Won, a
그리고 이제
full-time
한국
researcher at
커먼즈
the Center
네트워크에서
for Asian
활동하고 있는
Urban
이승원입니다.
Societies at Seoul National University and an
오늘 이
active member of the
세션은
Commons
원래
Network.
그 공유도시 글로벌 서밋으로
Initially, this
준비되었습니다.
forum was
그러나
planned to be a
코로나19의
sharing
세계적
city
확산
summit.
그리고
And
박원순
yet,
서울시장님의
due to
갑작스러운
unexpected
부고 등의
events such
그
as the
예상치
global
못한
spread
어려움
of
때문에
COVID-19
사실상
and the
서밋
sudden
개최가 어려웠습니다.
obituary of Seoul Mayor Park
하지만
Won-shin,
서울시는
it became almost
시민이 이룩해온
impossible to hold
공유서울의
the summit.
가치와 글로벌
However,
협력을
the Seoul
중단해서는 안
Metropolitan
된다는
Government
판단을
decided
내렸고
that the value of
서밋은
sharing
아니지만
Seoul
이렇게 글로벌
created by
포럼 형식으로
citizens
열
and
수 있게
global
되었습니다.
cooperation should not stop. And
공유도시들의
finally,
글로벌
today,
협력
this
필요성을
global
함께 인정하고
forum is being
서울의
held as a
역할을
replacement of
믿어준
the
이 자리에
summit.
참석한
I would like to
모든
take
분들께
this opportunity
감사드립니다.
to thank all of you here who have acknowledged the
이렇듯
need
모든
for
것이
global
예측하기
cooperation
힘들고
and
모든
trusted the role
정상적인
of
것과
Seoul.
권위들이 의문시되고 있는
In this COVID-19 pandemic era, when everything is unpredictable and all normalities and authorities are questioned, the sharing city movement becomes more important than ever. This is because the sharing city movement is not pursuing the way that the modern society and market achieved ownership, quantitative growth, competition, and profit. In other words, the sharing city movement is a movement and a way of life and community that responds to the global crisis of ecological problems, socioeconomic inequality, and the decline of democracy, which is seemingly romantic or an efficient way of sharing solidarity, friendship, and hospitality. But we know how strong and great the things that were considered romantic and ineffective have been that led us to endure and overcome this harsh pandemic era. What if we didn't have the power of sharing solidarity, friendship, and hospitality? It would be even more difficult to deal with it now. The Sharing City movement is a movement that transforms all discrimination and inequality into diversity and difference with this power of sharing solidarity, friendship, and hospitality. And it is a movement that turns the hierarchical bureaucracy into a horizontal and cooperative partnership. In addition, the Sharing City movement is a democracy movement in which urban residents produce and manage the necessary resources together. Therefore, the Sharing City movement, which is based on the sharing economy, is seeking civil control over large platform corporations and put priority on caring for the socially underprivileged, expansion of gender equality, horizontal cooperation and collaboration between cities. We are carrying out new creative and de-authoritative experiments for prosperity, hospitality, and solidarity for migrants, refugees, and ecological transformation and empowerment of all citizens. Cities are both speculative and generative, unequal and cooperative, privatized and open at the same time. In such double-faced cities, the Sharing City movement is also an urban commons movement in which citizens create and use the common resources necessary for personal life and social dignity and democratically shape the rules. And therefore, the sharing city movement is a movement in which the right to the city is constantly expanding, and it is also a movement to create a city for all. So, the sharing city movement is the most political and sovereign practice led by citizens. After the declaration of sharing Seoul in 2012, the city of Seoul has clearly implemented various sharing policies. In addition, they have contributed a lot to global cooperation. However, the socioeconomic gravity of a megacity with a population of 10 million is too great in the case of Seoul. And there has already been a lot of speculative development of urban space and resources and privatization by a small number of select groups. For this reason, the city of Seoul has not been able to actively promote the sharing policy in a traditional dimension. For example, the city of Seoul promoted the use of bicycles by citizens through its public bicycle policy, but on the contrary, it also promoted a policy to expand public parking lots to increase car use and carbon emissions. Over the past 8 years, there have been many trials and errors in the shaping policy of Seoul. Nevertheless, Seoul's efforts toward a sharing city have encouraged various sharing activities of the citizens of Seoul, from activities to share object spaces and knowledge, to resistance to speculative urbanization and village community movements in response to gentrification, and by establishing community housing and commercial spaces together, citizens' sharing activities have spread in a variety of ways, including self-governing activities to create. Citizens cultivate urban gardens among dense apartment forests. Apartment residents generate solar energy, and villagers have experimented with zero waste and carbon reductions everywhere. Digital technology for platform business is also applied to resident autonomy, knowledge and information sharing, and local resource circulation. Some dismiss it as a fragmentary activity like a fad, but some say that these sharing activities, which take place constantly without stopping, like guerrillas, are one of the greatest forces that protect Seoul and bring life to it. Sharing Seoul was a policy promoted by the city of Seoul, but at the same time, it is also a joint work with a lot of effort from the citizens of Seoul. Sharing activities created in Seoul have had an influence on Seoul's sharing policy, like you see in this slide, and the Seoul Metropolitan Government has established a 5-year basic plan for sharing Seoul that will start anew from next year and for 1 year this year. SNU-CAUS also participated in this work. The vision of the new plan is Sharing City Seoul, an ecological and inclusive city based on civic autonomy, and the goal is sustainable cooperative production and sharing of urban resources. First, the most important strategy is to provide a basis for sharing and commons-based lives necessary for the common production of shared regional circular economy and common resources led by citizens. This is also a strategy to escape the gravity of a megacity. Second, through this, we support citizens to freely create a daily movement that connect shared activities and urban commons. To some, this master plan may seem inadequate, and to some, it may seem realistically difficult. That's right. The sharing policy and the various sharing activities of citizens are very difficult and almost impossible to achieve by just one city or just one group alone. It's just like the response to the pandemic shouldn't be done by just one group or one city. And it's not just the case in Seoul. Most cities are in the same situation like San Francisco, London, Paris, Amsterdam, Ghent, Barcelona, and Malmö. A good case can be born and known from a town or city. However, for the case to persist, it must spread to other regions and cities. In addition, the values of sharing and urban commons should spread not only to one region or its peripheries, but the entire globe to be at the center of economic logic and social values, and to have stronger civil control and sharing of political power. Perhaps this is the purpose of global cooperation of sharing cities. It is also the necessity of jointly creating Seoul proposal for global cooperation between sharing cities in the era of COVID-19 and beyond. Now, the draft of the Seoul proposal was enriched by many participants here in just 2 weeks and will become available on the website of Seoul Innovation Week after today. In addition, I am very confident that the Seoul proposal will be further upgraded and will increase its visibility through this meeting today and the discussions and opinions to be held in the future. I would like to close my presentation by briefly explaining the core programs for global cooperation in the Seoul proposal. The first core program is the creation of common principles for global cooperation among sharing cities. This is very difficult and maybe unattainable task. However, at least as we move toward with this work, we will make it clear that we understand each other better and will work with. The second core program is the collaborative work of archiving and mapping the numerous sharing city movement and urban commons activities around the world. This will connect activities without being fragmented or isolated, and the connected activities will become the arteries and muscles of global cooperation. The third core program is for measuring the effectiveness and value created through sharing and commoning. This work will share its achievement and provide a guide for mutual cooperation to support weekend sharing activities. The fourth core program is the empowerment of citizens and ecological restoration through joint learning and joint cooperation based on knowledge and information sharing. This will be the result of sharing activities being connected and supporting each other. And finally, the Seoul proposal will contain the global cooperative governance and summit necessary for all these activities and the joint research projects required. The presentations following my presentation shed light on great examples of why global cooperation between sharing cities is necessary and what will be shared. We hope to cooperate together so that the sharing city can become a city for all and for global citizens. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lee Sin-wan. And yes, we'll go for the next presentation by Alvaro Horo.
Hello, everybody. First thing, I would like to thank Seoul City Hall for inviting Barcelona to this forum. There's been always a very good relation in terms of collaboration between Seoul and Barcelona, and we would like to keep that for the future. And I hope this event is another step in that direction. I would like to share with you two blogs in my presentation. One will be related to how in Barcelona we've been trying to push forward all the social economy and particularly collaborative or sharing economy, and how we end up helping to create the Sharing Cities Network, where Seoul has been playing a role. And then I would like to share with you another blog that I've been asked for by Seoul about what has been the experience of Barcelona related to the pandemic. And I would like to finish with an invitation for all of you. So I just got into it. I try to be short and clear, and I hope it's going to be inspiring and interesting for you. Of course, open to get deeper in any of the topics as you want. First thing I would like to share, and that's my first slide, is like Barcelona for us, economy is a bit far more complex than sometimes newspapers or textbooks in University of Economics explain us. But for us in economy, there is different parts, more visible and invisible parts. We need basically natural ecosystems for economy to function. We need a lot of invisible work done unfortunately only mostly by women, but I think that we are working this, making much more visible and much more shared between genders. So what we call reproductive economy, and all our productive economy is based on these two grounds: the reproductive economy or invisible work, and these ecosystems. And within the productive economy, we also have apart from the private economy or state economy, we have what we call social economy, which is a third leg on economy, which explain a lot of different practices that tries to bring economy into sustainability and into putting life in the center. We've been working seriously on that. We have a history on social economy in Barcelona, and within that, in the digital era, we are trying to push forward a truly collaborative economy or truly sharing economy, where we apply social economy principles and practices to digital economy. In next slide, I'm explaining the different lines of work we've been working on this strategy for already 4 years, and which is already bringing us some results. For example, in 2.5 years, the rate of cooperatives creation in Barcelona has been almost 3 times the rhythm of before in 3 years. Next slide. But all this, although we've been working very strongly, is bringing us to future big challenges for social economy: scaling up, cross-pollination, digital disruption on platform economy, and how we work with low-income and migrant communities. Now I'm going to focus in challenge number 2, because it's related to digital economy, how we can bring the principles and the values and the practices of social economy to the digital era. For us, first thing we have to know about platform economy is that there is a challenge on that, and we've been having a lot of different tensions and conflicts in Barcelona related to that, with taxi drivers, with hotels, with neighborhoods where there are a lot of Airbnb kind of flats. And there's, of course, we have to do something with all that, and we have to really face it, because although they use the same label, for us, that's not really sharing economy or collaborative economy. That's our kind of normal business models that are much more extractive than collaborative. So although we think there is this challenge, and as you can see in this next slide, for us we have to understand that it's very important to understand the differences between different models. Not everything that happens in a digital platform is the same, although it could sometimes blame they are the same. We've been doing this scheme about how, depending on the community property governance and the fact that whether there is peer-to-peer or business-to-consumer, we have different models, and we can separate and we can differentiate in different ways. We have some examples in this slide. And we are using this star with these 5 points, where we can get some criteria to analyze and differentiate the different models, so we can really understand what is sharing economy and what are just what we call platform economy. So apart from the challenge, as we think there's a big opportunity in Barcelona. We have a big ecosystem of different projects, as some you can see in this slide, where we can be working with applying the social economy values into digital era. And that's why we've been working in the past through the Sharing Cities network together. That first time was launched in Amsterdam, then we met again next year after in New York, and then in Barcelona in 2018. And yeah, we basically gather 50 cities from all over the world, from the 5 continents, and we set up the first declaration to really try to put on the table what is the approach of cities to sharing economy, how we can defend rights, labor, environmental, consumers, data sovereignty, city sovereignty, and at the same time promote in the digital area platforms that keep all these values and that apply, as I said, the practices of social economy. I really encourage all of you to have a look at this declaration. And Seoul was one of the cities that took part of the declaration and that signed it. And it's the first and the only cities declaration on this topic. So I'm really happy that Seoul took a bit the ground on this topic and keeps on continuing to maintain this flame and make cities keep on working on all these issues. And the next block, I will pass now to the next slide, is about how we dealt in Barcelona with the COVID challenge that, like a lot of cities in the world, did it. I'm just going to share some examples very briefly that I hope it could be inspiring. First, one thing is that we did the Barcelona deal. which is basically we gathered more than 200 organizations and entities, companies from all over the city, very representative ones, to try to set up a deal, an agreement, how we can work together in order to face the situation in economic, social, and health terms. And we've been working for a few months after the lockdown, and then we hope now this agreement is done, and we're working on it to kind of get all this energy together. There are different actions, of course. There were actions led by the administration and actions led by civil society. I put just some examples about both kinds. For example, related to actions led by administration, we have to say, well, one of the first things we did is like set up a coordination center where all these different things that were happening, all the different themes were coordinated, and it was very clearly explained to citizens through a specific website just created for that, with a lot of practical information, a lot of different connections in terms of food, health, mobility, legal issues, caring, etc., etc. After that, we set up a website where we can also get proposals from citizens. It's what we call the platform Decidir in Barcelona, like Decide in Barcelona, which is a platform that we have created for direct democracy, and it's been working for already quite a few years in free software frame, and that is open for any city or organization to be used. So I encourage you to have a look if it could be interesting for your organization or city. And when we were getting ideas, we were getting proposals, and we were getting offers from citizens related to how to face the COVID-19 situation. Taking a bit more about my area of work, which is social economy, as I explained at the beginning, we launched some different actions in the frame of COVID to help economic organizations and companies to face the situation. Different training and assessment services, some kind of financial support, some kind of credit grants, and we've been working very closely together with all the network of social economy in Barcelona to work in a 10 years strategy that is going to help us to face the challenges that the economic crisis has brought to us through the pandemic. That strategy is built in 10 projects, 10 city projects that we have 10 years to develop, but some of them are already we've been working very seriously on it, like a social economy investment fund with public and private funds. One of the key examples related to digital economy is been together with university, we set up a program. It's called Match Impulse, where we're going to be helping social economic entities and organizations to get into digital area and to bring to platforms their services and products, and get a lot more into platform economy, but with the values of a social economy. This program is going to be launched in the next month, and we'll be working together with the university for a few months very, very closely. We also, with the ethical banking, we set up a 4 million funds for those kinds of projects to kind of face the difficult situation. And we also took for the small shops in the neighborhood, especially in low-income neighborhoods, we've been launching a digital alternative currency. It's called REC, where people, as you can see in the slide, through the mobile phone, can pay and can buy in the small shops of the neighborhood. So the small shops are not like completely crashed down in this situation. We make the money to circulate within the neighborhood and help, because we think that the neighborhoods are alive while there is like small shops and small business to keep alive in their streets. Also, we've been working and that's actually more led by ecosystem. To give you some examples, a lot of the network of shops in Barcelona, all the small neighborhood shops, they together create a digital map where everybody could know which ones were open, which ones were doing home delivery, helping in the moments of the lockdown for especially elderly or ill people to get their food at home, taking the minimum risk possible. And another example of the actions led by community or by civil society has been by the farmers' unions, farmers' organizations. They organize a website for people to order food straight from farmers, local sustainable food, directly to home delivery to their own places, allowing elderly or ill people to not having to get out to the street and get risk in terms of the disease. So they could get this local sustainable food at home, straight from farmers. Food aid in general has been a big thing through the COVID, as you can imagine, especially in the strongest moments of the lockdown. We've been working in different elements. In this map of Barcelona, you have some of these examples of what things we've been doing. We've been doing, for example, next slide, we're distributing 20,000 baskets that was food for 2 weeks for these old people that didn't have anyone to help, and they couldn't allow to buy through websites because some of them they crash or because the income elements. We really increase all the food aid services for vulnerable collectives, and we also bring 30,000 food credit cards. So for low-income families, they could get food through these cards, or when the schools were closed and children were at home. That's just a few examples of a lot of the different food measures that we had. And then I want to end up with a look at the future, where we will really want to have food as a main topic in Barcelona to work on, related to what we learned from the pandemic, but also thinking about what is one of the key elements that could bring a lot of change in terms of environmental, economic, social, cultural change in cities and in the world. And cities are raising their voice every time more and more in this topic. It is food. In Barcelona, we have proposed to be the world capital for sustainable food in 2021. We're going to be hosting the Milan Pact gathering of cities, and I hope really Seoul and other cities could join us, sharing experiences, best practices on how to bring our food systems into sustainability, into equality, how we can make our food system healthy, sustainable, and fair. And that's why we want to work on it. We are working already very intensively, and we're going to be working very intensively during 2021. It's going to be the topic. We're going to be doing things all over the place during 2021. And October 2021, we are going to be joining together with other cities 10 days before the Climate Change Summit in Glasgow, Scotland, trying to raise our voice, send some energy to this Climate Change Summit, and make sure that cities raise their voice on this topic and share all they can do to change the food system, which, as you know, is 1/3 of the climate change gases emissions. And of course, we cannot face climate change if we don't face also the challenges of the food system. So please feel free to join us, and I hope some of you could come on Barcelona on October to share and to exchange in the Sustainable World Food Capital 2021. Thank you very much, and big hug to our friends in Korea.
All right, excellent. Yeah, that was Alvaro Porro of the Barcelona City Council talking about their best practices there in Barcelona for COVID-19 response. And we're on to our next presentation by Oksana Mont and Yulia Polgan on the future of sharing cities, crises, cities, and communities. Go ahead, Oksana and Yulia.
Hello, my name is Oksana Mont, and I'm professor in sustainable consumption governance at Lund University, Sweden. My co-author for this presentation is Yulia Vaitenko-Palgan, associate professor at Lund University. And we are both delighted to have opportunity to address you at the Seoul Sharing Cities Global Forum 2020. 2020 is a dramatic year when the world paused in a response to the global pandemic of COVID-19. Our economies have been drastically impacted and may potentially change forever. As we currently witness our cities and communities deal with the second wave of COVID-19, Together with many other volunteers, sharing economy organizations are helping cities to provide essential public services. The sharing economy itself has emerged a decade ago in response to the financial crisis of 2008. As a result of the crisis, many people lost their jobs and faced economic hardships, and were looking for new ways to generate income and to gain access to resources in more economical and social ways. In 2020, the world is facing another crisis, which is expected to have similar, if not far worse, impacts on the global economy. However, contrary to the economic crisis of 2008, the COVID-19 pandemic forces people to remain apart physically instead of bringing people together. Many countries have enforced strict social distancing measures meant to prevent the spread of the virus. Yet, the backbone of the sharing economy is interacting and exchanging resources among peers. In this presentation, we ask two questions. How responses of sharing economy organizations to the pandemic support cities? What can cities do to utilize the potential of the sharing economy? We specifically look at the responses of mobility, space, and goods sharing organizations. So how responses of mobility sharing organizations support cities? Around the globe, we find many examples when mobility sharing organizations extend ride-sharing services to drive health workers to hospitals. We see ride-sharing organizations also transport people to COVID-19 testing facilities at discounted rate. We see free deliveries of goods have been organized to healthcare facilities and food banks. Some mobility sharing organizations partner with food delivery organizations to provide food to the most vulnerable cities in community. Seeing the rise in domestic violence, ride-sharing organizations offer free trips to shelters to domestic violence victims. We see extending mobility services to deliver necessities to people other than food. There have been many cases reported when mobility sharing organizations add matchmaking services between businesses with high delivery demand and people or businesses looking for delivery jobs, resulting therefore in relocation of workforce where it's mostly needed. We also see many car and bike-based delivery services helping restaurants to shift from dine-in guests to people ordering food online. Some organizations may also strategic investments in innovative solutions to overcome the consequences of the pandemic, as for example, announcing a global virtual hackathon for innovative ideas. Space sharing organizations also offer a wealth of examples ranging from organizations that offer discounts on accommodation to frontline health workers, shifting short-term to long-term rental, or turning short-term space rental into conferencing facilities to those working from home. We also see a growing market of remote locations being offered for sharing for distance working. Many organizations in space sharing added services such as online experiences to encourage people to learn new skills, engage in various activities as private individuals and as workers. Goods sharing organizations. Goods sharing organizations also offer support, although they're much smaller than the previous mentioned ones. They, for example, quarantine the goods between users to reduce the spread of virus. They move online when feasible or keep open for social networking purposes when possible. And they also deliver goods to those in need in communities. So to summarize, born out of a past crisis, the sharing economy helps us again to overcome the current crisis by activating idling resources, by helping avoid dependence on global supply chains, by activating people and communities, by localizing reuse and repair cycles to prolong life of assets and goods to be shared by many people. by repurposing urban spaces for shared use, and by bringing people together on distance or virtually. So cities have also roles to play, leveraging actions of sharing organizations that create added social, environmental, and economic value to people. Cities have the power to amplify the value created and safeguard it in a long run. One way to help cities structure their actions for leveraging and amplifying the value created by sharing organizations in response to the COVID-19 pandemics and in the post-COVID world is the municipal governance framework for engaging with the sharing economy developed by our research team. It distinguishes 5 mechanisms for engagement, including regulating, providing, enabling, collaborating, and self-governing, and 11 roles. So looking into the future, city actions to build up post-COVID resilience can be classified in the 5 aforementioned mechanisms. Cities, for example, can support the sharing economy through regulating mechanism by developing codes and regulations for resilient urban infrastructure with outdoor services, local sharing networks, and repair activities. Cities can also safely sharing resources. For example, many cities now are developing plans to extend the infrastructure for bikes and support bike sharing organizations that offer superior mobility options to public transport in Corona times. Many cities have developed internal schemes for sharing resources, which constitutes the self-governing mechanisms. They can therefore open up city-owned assets to many users. For example, they can open up their municipal car and bike sharing organizations, premises closed in evenings or on weekends, sharing specialized equipment, and so on. Cities can build resilience through collaborating with sharing organizations in providing essential services to the public. And finally, cities can also enable sharing economy by, for example, mapping idling resources in cities and creating smart sharing maps and engaging people and platforms in activating them. I would like to conclude these with words of one wise man. In the midst of every crisis lies great opportunity. This quick overview demonstrated that sharing economy organizations, although being dramatically affected by the pandemic, as the rest of us, are already providing essential services to the public together with other actors in society. To build resilience in our cities, city councils need to identify the gaps in services that platforms are currently filling, leverage the services of sharing organizations, and help amplify the value through agile governance structures for long-term resilience. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Oksana. Now we're on to reshaping cities, rising to the occasion. Harman von Sprang. So go ahead, Harman, all yours.
Hi, my name is Harman van Sprang and I'm the co-founder of the Sharing Cities Alliance and of a social enterprise called ShareNL. We've set foot in a new decade, but we've also entered an entirely new era. The unforeseen and exceptional occurrences this year are just the first steps of a journey that will require a great deal of all of us. And so it's time to rise to the occasion. If we look at cities around the world, from Amsterdam to Cape Town and from Singapore to New York, from Washington DC to Seoul, we have seen and are still seeing many difficulties in cities. However, the challenges of today are also the opportunities of tomorrow. During the past decade, we've worked passionately on shaping the sharing economy, and we inspired thousands of people through presentations. We conducted research. We worked together with several cities and companies around the world. We created concepts for companies to have their business models changed to the sharing economy. And of course, we've organized meetups and events and summits, all to get people from around the world together. and to just find out what the sharing economy is about, not only in countries, but especially also in our cities. And over the past few years, we've seen many of you and also other organizations in this field evolve and doing great work, which we value highly. And we love to continue to collaborate internationally, of course, with you all to bring out the best in our cities. And that is also what this forum today is about. And you've seen already some presentations today that are tapping into this and are forming ideas of how to formulate the future, so to say. What I would like to do differently maybe than the previous presentations is to give you a bit of insight in how it could look like in our local communities and in our neighborhoods. Because if there's one thing that we have seen throughout this pandemic, then it's the fact that our lives have turned to local, to hyper-local, and to really to the neighborhood level. Take, for example, also Neil Gorenflo, also the moderator of today, and a great friend. He also already, just before the pandemic, thought of doing more local work and helping out more in this local community, and he wrote some great stuff also about that on shareable.net. So I would advise you to read that. It's also my experience. I live in Amsterdam, and maybe a little side note, the great thing is that one of the first things that we did with our organizations, also with ShareNL, which I co-founded together with Peter van der Glint, who is also here today, we took the initiative to launch Amsterdam Sharing City, and we were inspired by Sharing City Seoul at that time. So we launched that in 2015, really to address all the opportunities and challenges of the sharing economy on a local level, and to see how it could benefit, of course, the city. So that is also what I've been doing already for many years within my neighborhood here in Amsterdam, where I live already almost 20 years now, and together with some other amazing neighbors and a great community, we turned this into a thriving place to live, to work, and to enjoy life as much as we can. So let me just show some examples or share some examples of how our community is looking like. And that was already maybe the case before the pandemic, but I think it even made our community more closely connected throughout the pandemic. And I really wish, and that is my hope, that we can have more of these communities and neighborhoods in cities around the world, because I see how much value it has for people, for the residents of a city, and therefore for the city as a whole. So just to spontaneously name some examples, I think we're lucky in my neighborhood that we have at the other side of the street some small grass and water, and then a park. And this makes it possible to, especially when it's nice weather, to sit outside with each other. So, for example, one of the things that we did, which is easy, of course, but still, a few years ago, we bought a second-hand picnic table together with some other neighbors. So everybody chipped in, and we just bought this picnic table. And of course, especially before we had to be socially distanced, we all gathered around that picnic table, especially in summertime, as I said, and just to have a coffee or a drink or have a meal together and share a laugh and share a cry every now and then. And I think that fact already, that you, of course, buy something secondhand, pre-owned, pre-loved, so to say, and also are able to do that together and especially use it together, I think is a simple example, but something that is social and sustainable and even, of course, socially, not also financially, also a smart way to do it. So that is something that we have here. I told you that we live near the water, and a great thing there is that already a few years ago, some kids here in the neighborhood, including mine, found out that you can swim there and that it's healthy and it's not polluted in any way. So because of the pandemic, when we all had to be in a lockdown, or here in the Netherlands what they call like an intelligence lockdown, of course a lot of people have been working from home continuously. And the interesting thing is that now more and more also adult neighbors found out, of course, that especially when it's a bit hotter inside to work throughout the summer, that you can just like take a break, put your swim shorts on and just jump in the water together, which is great fun, especially when you do it with a few neighbors all together. And it's also, I think, great for mental health and of course, physical health. To have a swim every now and then, which is, of course, I think one of the elements that also makes you more resilient as a person. And of course, in the end, with, I think, the shared connection and the shared fun that we have, also the resilience of our community in this case. So some other examples, of course, as you know, in Amsterdam, we all bike, so we all have our own bikes, but funnily enough, you see that more and more people also have their swap feeds, their swap bike, which is a shared model where you sort of lease the bike and that you can always turn it back in for repairs, etc. So even with everybody owning a bike here in Amsterdam, you see new models coming up, new platform models, which are interesting to explore. Of course, maybe also for other cities in a way that people still care for their bike but don't have to buy it. Then, of course, cars. I mean, we're not that much like a car-based city, I think, here in Amsterdam. And that's maybe also shown by the fact that we already have 11,000 shared cars in our city. Those might be peer-to-peer cars, but also different car brands have their own models and platforms with shared cars, of course. So it's so very easy to just have like a few of those apps in your phone. And really my experience also from the last few weeks and months, especially because I got rid of my own car, my previously leased car at least. And so I'm using all those car sharing platforms again with a lot of pleasure. And it's really that easy to just like book a car and within like a few minutes open that car with an app and just drive away. So in case you don't want to bike in our city, you have a car within a few minutes as a really easy model, as an alternative. And I think that will be seen much more, I think, in cities throughout the world if we look at shared and smart transportation and mobility. What else is there? I'm looking at the time a bit, but let me see. Yeah, one example that we also have, you know, probably those little book libraries in neighborhoods throughout cities in the world. We also have one, we introduced one a few years ago. The interesting thing is that we don't only use it for books, but we also use it for a lot of other secondhand goods. So if people clean out their attic, they put like CDs or cutlery or shoes or other household appliances in this little sort of library, but it's a small sort of cupboard outside. And it's a great way to get people used to sharing and to sort of sharing forward, in this case, stuff that they don't use anymore. So it's reuse. And it's also a great place because people connect while standing at the same time at this little sharing home, as we call it. So another great example, I think, to introduce, and we even recently introduced it to IKEA to maybe think of doing this also more on a wide scale. What else? Yeah, have a dog. I'm sure that's not possible for everybody, but I mean, we already had a dog for years, but we have a new one which we already got before COVID still. But if you look at your health again, to go outside, to go to the park with your own dog, or maybe just a dog of a neighbor, it's great. I can recommend it to everybody, especially if you have a sweet dog like ours. Yeah, and of course, travel and tourism changed completely. I mean, and I've been flying around the world, which is of course not sustainable at all, but at least trying to make an impact with our thought leadership, so to say, on the sharing economy. of course, that all came to a stop, and we're doing this all digital. But if you look at travel, I mean, I'm experiencing and exploring my own city even more than before, because of course our lives, as I said, turned to a hyper-local mode. And I think that's also an upside to just see what gems are there maybe around the corner in your own city, and maybe also where you can have maybe a walk together with a friend or somebody from your family, and just explore what is around the corner in your own beloved city. Those were some examples, and really not meant just only as easy examples of my neighborhood, but also, again, as I said before, how our communities and our neighborhoods and our cities could look like. With my work, with our work also, we would like to advance this kind of thinking, because I think also after COVID, we will have much more maybe a hyper-local life, not maybe to all aspects, but if you see, for example, the 15-minute city concept also, that is really gaining traction, I think, around the world already. And we see that our life and also our work is turning much more to our homes. Let's continue our discussion and our conversation on sharing cities and all the opportunities and all the challenges that are there currently and also after COVID together. I would like to thank you for your time, and if any information is needed to help you out in your community or in your city, then I would love to help you out there. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Harmon. And so we're moving now into the next section of our time together, where we'll hear from our discussants, reflecting on the presentations, the 4 presentations that just went, that we just heard. And that's really 4 different takes, but a nice way to think about it is, you know, Lisa and Juan talked about the network of sharing cities that are cooperating and what and how that can go forward, this sort of global scale. Alvaro talked about what Barcelona is doing at the local level and all that he has planned and Barcelona has planned. Then you get down to the platform level and what they can do locally. And then we, heard from Harmon about kind of a slice of life during COVID, local life, and how sharing plays a larger role there. And so that's a bit to kind of start us out. And let me introduce our discussants and hear their take too. So we've got Kes McCormick, Program Coordinator at Sharing City Sweden, and Associate Professor at Lund University. He works in the fields of sustainability, governance, innovation, cities, and greening the economy. We have Michelle Bowens, founder of the Foundation for Peer-to-Peer Alternatives, an author, researcher, thought leader, theorist of international renown on peer-to-peer and commons modalities in society. We have Mayo Fuster-Morel, co-founder of Sharing Cities Action, a faculty associate at the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society at Harvard, and the director of DIMMONS, an action research group at the Open University of Catalonia. And to kick off the commentary, we have Professor Back at Jeju National University, who has a deep and varied research career, but is currently focused on the commons and its application in many areas of life, including the cities. Go ahead, Professor. Thank you.
안녕하십니까. 저는
Good evening.
제주대 생략과
I am 백영경 and I'm teaching at the Department of Sociology at Jeju National University.
저는 3가지에 대해서 얘기해 보려고
Today, I would like to talk about 3 things.
예.
Yes.
제주 섬 그 자체도 매우 흥미로운 사례이지만 오늘은 이제 서울 중심으로 얘기를 하는 날이기
The
때문에
city of Jeju is very interesting city. However, today I would like to focus on Seoul, and I would like to talk about what is beneficial for us to build solidarity around the megacity of Seoul. First of all, I would like to talk about relationship between public and commons, caring and gender issues, and also I would like to talk about sharing and solidarity in the megacity of Seoul and relationship between
첫
public
번째
and commons.
공공과 커먼스에 관한 얘기.
First of all,
오늘
when it comes to relationship between public and commons,
공공성과 커먼스에
well,
관한
in the
얘기가
previous session, there was a lot of talk related to both the public and the commons or citizen assets, and what the public sector cannot do should be left to the commons.
저는
And for me,
공공과 커먼스에 대해서 또 좀
I believe that there is another context for thinking about public and commons in a different way. It's related to healthcare. Now, during this COVID-19 pandemic, we have a lot of problems related to the shortage of personnel as well as the patient bed area. So, essential medical care must be supplied as public goods.
시민들에게 무제한 공급이 될
But in order to enable unrestricted supply to those in need, the sense of commons is necessary. Well, I believe that it is important to provide unrestricted supply to those in need. But for that to happen,
제한이 없는 것이 아니라는
well, we have to acknowledge the fact that the supply that we have is not unrestricted, and therefore it is something that we have to share the same responsibility when it comes to getting and being provided with a supply of medical care. So I believe that the sense of commons is very necessary when it comes to managing and using the shared supply of goods together. Therefore, I believe that we need a sense of community rather than an abstract definition of the public. And therefore, I believe that in terms of allocating limited resources to whom first, why they should be shared with others, and how they should be shared, we need a sense of community. And therefore, I believe that we definitely need a sense of community, and the commons is what makes the public possible. Next, I would like to talk about care and gender issues.
돌봄 사회로의 전환에 관한 이야기가
Now, well, starting from Europe, there has been a lot of talk about the importance of care, and in modern society, welfare has been regarded as public good and outright. However, we cannot provide them to the world without restrictions. And this is especially true when it comes to the notion of care.
공공의 한계가 드러난 것.
Well, there is the public limitation in care, and that is not just because of the current situation with COVID-19. In Korea, well, there has been serious crisis of reproduction, and we have this serious crisis of social reproduction even before the outbreak of the pandemic. Care itself, as well as medical care, is a very valuable resource for us, and especially the time that is required for care is something that cannot be provided unlimitedly. And so the limitation of care is the limitation of the real world, and with this COVID-19 situation, we are seeing that a lot of people are suffered from the scarce resources of care, and also due to this COVID-19 situation, well, people need to be adjusted to this new kind of reality, and the suffering and difficulties that are faced by the public is really immense, something probably not imaginable. And so now social reorganization based on care post-COVID-19 should serve as an opportunity for social uplift to spread the principles of the commons in the entire society. However, it may be too easy to just follow existing gender practices without consciousness of gender inequality, and the undervaluation of existing reproductive labor is also based on gender. And in particular, certain labor of biological reproduction can only be performed by female citizens. Therefore, special recognition is necessary, and those who cannot produce capitalist exchange value but perform labor essential to the reproduction of life need to be recognized as workers. So I believe that we need to understand where these workers come from which regions of the country or which country of the world. We believe that we need to have better understanding of that too. Next, I would like to talk about sharing and solidarity in the megacity of Seoul. Currently, I work in the space of Jeju, but I have long been one of the Seoul citizens, and I have this special attachment to the city of Seoul. Well, as emphasized in the Seoul Declaration, changes in cities are important because cities have been the center of neoliberal consumerism. Well, looking at the increase in delivery workers or increase in packaging waste, the dark side brought by COVID-19, there are again problems emerging in cities. So the importance of sharing and solidarity is something that resonates with me. And the question of who and how to share what and how to solidify remains as an important question. Seoul is indeed an attractive city. And in Seoul, many new experiments are being carried out, such as the ones highlighted in this forum. And especially in this COVID-19 pandemic, we see more and more movement related to commons. However, it is still a city with the issues of military, tourism, recreation, food, landfills, and energy production that are all externalized or outsourced. In the case of Seoul, it is difficult to have functioning circulation and production to some degree, and the problem of concentration in the metropolitan area is very large. So it is very different from the characteristics of a lot of European countries. And especially those living in the countryside, if they want to come to Seoul, they have a lot of transport to make that happen. Well, and also, as Seoul becomes a great place, a lot of people are worried about what if all the young people in the local regions want to leave for Seoul, which I don't necessarily agree. So cooperation between sharing cities is important. And the issue of cooperation between Seoul and outside Seoul has to be considered. And I believe it is a reflection of Seoul's own dependence as well. But the problem of self-sufficiency should be taken more seriously. Skewing toward the direction of smart agriculture is also problematic when talking about urban agriculture, because it is difficult for local agriculture to move beyond growing crops to feed the metropolitan area. Jeju is a self-governing city, and there has been a lot of experiments going on with the help of local government. And the problems we see is that we have a lot of tourists, and the government wants to turn Jeju Island into a military base. And there are a lot of problems that get in the way of building the right commons in Jeju Island. So we do have some shared and common challenges to tackle, just like in Seoul. Like I said, Seoul is a city that cannot be fully self-sufficient and with circulation, and I believe that we need to admit it. It is necessary to seek symbiotic solidarity with other local small and medium-sized cities and regions that are waning. And also, I believe that we need more transnational solidarity for having realistic relationships and establishing new solidarity with sharing cities.
빚을
And
기억한다면은
if
우리는
we
조금
remember
더 탄탄한
the
연대를
debt,
구축해가는
the relationship they would like to realize,
확장을 이루어 나가는데 많은
I believe that it can be very instrumental in building solidarity among cities based on history and reality. And I believe that our solidarity movement of sharing cities will make a greater contribution to building a new world order post-COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Back. And we're on to hearing from Cass McCormick, ideas, insights, inspirations from Sharing Cities, Sweden. Go ahead, Cass.
Thank you, Neil. Look, it's fantastic to be here. Fantastic to join a global online event. I'm still amazed by the internet and our online events every time I join them, even though we're doing them now almost on a daily basis. But it is extraordinary that I can be sitting here in Sweden, looking outside at the winter and so on, and be speaking to you in Seoul and all over the world. My name is Cass McCormick, and I am an associate professor at Lund University, as Neil said. And I'm also the program coordinator for Sharing Cities Sweden, which is a national program for the sharing economy in cities in Sweden. This national program is part of an even larger program called Viable Cities on smart and sustainable cities. And this is a strategic innovation program in Sweden. And I think both these programs tell you a little bit about Sweden as a country and the importance they place on cities, on the role of sharing in cities and the role of smart and sustainable cities going forwards into the future. And within this Sharing Cities Sweden program, we've been developing and establishing 4 test beds in 4 different cities, working with the sharing practices and sharing organisations and so on. And I think there's a lot of experience we can draw from here. And in fact, Oksana and Yulia have both been involved in this program at different points along the way. So many of the things they talked about, I think, are related to Sharing Cities Sweden. But look, just relating back to the 4 speakers, fantastic talks, so different talks as well, which I think is also great. Our very first speaker, Lee, I think the very first point made about a city for all. This is a fundamental point that we need to return to continuously. What is a city for all? And how do we create a city for all in reality? And who is for all? Who are we counting? Who's in? Are we counting everyone in, or are we missing some people? And what is a city, and what constitutes a city, and what's the kind of city we want to live in? There's just so many questions there, but I think related to sharing, it certainly brings me back to the ideas and the importance of the role of physical infrastructure in cities in shaping our urban lifestyles and our consumption patterns, and how easy or hard it is for us to engage in the sharing economy. Our urban infrastructure and urban design can decide if we're going to be part of the sharing economy or not. We know that this is so important in shifting the design of our cities. We also know that public space and the commons is also very important to urban life and communities. And this kind of came up, I think, through several of the speakers. I don't have an answer to this question, and I don't think that's really important, a city for all question. I think what's important is that the city for all is constantly on our agenda and is never removed from our agenda in cities. Our second speaker, Alvaro, spoke about many things, but one thing that stuck out to me was food that he raised, and food as an entry point to change, or to in fact larger change. He's absolutely right that food is deeply connected to climate change and a changing climate, and that sustainable and urban agriculture is a really pretty interesting area for us to be thinking about and working with, and also connected to our public health and our personal health. And I think that we can see this in our cities connected to the diets we have, and eating locally and so on. And the sharing economy does fit in here as well. So I think that this particular space, which Alvaro is pointing at, I think is very relevant moving forwards, and probably has always been very relevant. But food as an entry point to working with public health, climate change and sharing was a great point that Alvaro made. Jumping to my colleagues, Oksana and Yulia, talking about the future of sharing. Yeah, I mean, the points they were bringing up along the way, I fully agree with. That they ended with an interesting quote, I think, from a wise man quote. And I would point out to everyone that unfortunately we have quite a few unwise men around the world, from the USA to Australia, you name it, there's a lot of them. But their wise man quote was not a bad one, about the idea that we can find opportunity from crisis. And this is absolutely true. We've seen this through history, that we can find opportunity from crisis. But it is important to say, and to be a bit provocative, that we have been here before. We have experienced crisis over the past 40, 50, 60 years related to climate change and to biodiversity and to the crisis and so on. And we haven't come out taking our opportunity. And I suppose today and in this pandemic, we need to ask the question, how are we going to capture this window of opportunity? How is it going to be different going forwards? And I like to go back to a quote from a young, wise woman who said that we need to act like the house is on fire. And that is, of course, Greta Thunberg from Sweden. And I would say that quote is pretty important. That's telling us that we need to start making decisions like we're in an emergency situation, and not decisions like that we can wait decades and decades before significant change. And finally, our final speaker, Harman. Harman gave a lovely talk about examples of sharing from his life. And I think for me, he talked very much about the mundane side of living, sharing, and being part of cities. Mundane means kind of like the daily things that happen in our lives and in cities, the way we actually live. And this is so fundamentally important when we talk about cities. I'm at many conferences and research events where people talk about cities, and sometimes I wonder the last time that person was actually in a city, the last time they walked on the streets in the back lanes and were part of the life of cities, because cities are buzzing, vibrant places, or we hope them to be. And for me, when Harman was talking, he made me think about the life of the city and about two particular visions we have about the city. One of them is the smart city, the smart, technical, intelligent city, which is sharp and smooth and everything works. I've never seen one of those types of cities, but a lot of people have a vision of that city. The other city is the version, I think, that Harman talked about, the vibrant, buzzing, full of people, where sharing is merging into people's lives and so on. And I don't think that these visions are incompatible. I do think they can fit together, but I do think there are serious tensions between these visions and what we want going forwards. And I think that we have to confront those tensions if we want to be living in prosperous, sustainable and lively cities. So now I've spoken for a little while, I'll just say a few more points. I mean, I just wanted to say, following on from what Oksana said and Yulia, I do think that absolutely we're standing in the middle of a crisis. And it's not just a pandemic. The global biodiversity crisis, the global climate change crisis, these are well and truly on our doorstep. We're in the middle of them, and we need to be making decisions right now based on longer term visions of the future and how we want to go forwards. And as we all know, we actually have a set of goals in place called the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals, which set out the things that we should be aiming to achieve going forwards into the future. And I won't go into the goals, but I will say that for us to achieve any of these goals, we must confront our consumption patterns. And I'm talking about the consumption patterns in high-income countries or high-income cities, the wealthy parts of the world, which are consuming far beyond the planetary boundaries. And this is where sharing comes in, of course, and other ways of working with consumption. We must confront that if we want to achieve our global sustainable development goals. At the same time, the sustainable development goals also highlight again the huge importance of partnerships. There is no sector, no country, no leader, no organisation that can do this alone. Everything is at the intersection between sectors and countries and topics and so on. So we must collaborate. And again, here, I think sharing plays a fundamental role of bringing together people and ideas and different ways of living. I'll just finish with one final point, Neil, if I've got one more minute. I would say that a very practical thing moving forward is that only learning organisations will survive and prosper in a shifting world of pandemics and crises. So what is a learning organisation? A learning organisation is an organisation which can take in new information, which is open to new information, knowledge and understanding, which is actively seeking out this knowledge and understanding. And I think that is, again, kind of part of our work with Sharing Cities Sweden, is that we have in fact really been working on this idea of creating learning organizations and sharing everything that we're learning about the sharing economy. And in fact, we developed a massive online course, a MOOC on sharing cities, which captures all of the things that we're doing in the sharing economy. And it's not to say that we have all the answers or the principles or so on going forwards, but we certainly have some idea about what we've been doing along the way. So I would encourage all those that work with all different kinds of organizations to make sure they're part of a learning organization, and that our massive open online course is a great place to start if you want to jump into the world of the sharing economy in cities. And you can find it on our website, of course. I will stop there. Again, wonderful to hear these different speakers. I thought the speeches were all, like I said, quite unique and quite different, which creates such a dynamic set of presentations. Thanks a lot. Over to you, Neil.
Thank you, Kes. Yeah. Taking a look at Kes's MOOC, and you guys have gotten like tens of thousands of students or something like that. I mean, you have a few of those MOOCs, but I've been really impressed with the reach and quality of the material. Yeah, congrats on that. And so we're on to hear from my friend Michelle Bowens with comments on the prior presentations with a theme of how to organize city-based translocal commons governance. Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone. It was really interesting. And thank you, Neil, for keeping everything on the rails. Last year, some of us were in Seoul before COVID, where the late Mayor Park declared that he wanted to move from a sharing city paradigm to a common city paradigm. And what I think that he meant was that we have to start looking at the commons as a really structural element, not just as something nice to do or something spontaneous that is purely bottom up. And the beautiful examples that Harman brought forward, but also not just policy, like Alvaro explained really how a city can actually deal with commons. So I want to make a few points about this kind of shift to a more structural thinking. And so one of the things that we noted during the COVID-19 crisis was an implosion of the health supply chain. Certainly in Europe, there was nothing. There was no PPEs, no masks. Everything was missing. And as a counter movement, we saw this spontaneous and enormous amount of self-organization of the maker movement. Like literally in 2-3 weeks, they were able to produce not just masks, but really complex ventilators and PPE equipment. But the problem was that the hospitals and the state institutions were not ready to accept this. So the maker movement showed that it could do it, but on the side of the recipients, there was enormous legal fear of litigation and lack of quality. And so what it points out to me is that what was lacking structurally were public commons cooperation protocols, right? And we know that can work because in Italy, after the Bologna regulation was copied by 250 other cities, we now have 1 million Italians who are regularly contributing to their urban commons. So we know this works. And so far, the only thing I've seen is in France, where the public hospitals got together to actually make a process to accept these productions from basically, what was commons-based peer production. So I think this is really something that officials should start thinking about, is that we can't leave this to chance. And what it also means is that we are having to see the health as a commons as well, not just as a public good. And I'm very sympathetic to what Professor Pike, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, but I'm very sympathetic about the issues that you brought up, because here's the issue, I think, historically, right? let's take social welfare. Social welfare was very clearly a bottom-up grassroots emanation of the labor movement. So all the farmers were chased from their land, came into the cities where they were dying when they were 35, and they mutualized their social risk. But even at the best of times, only 20% of the workers had access to these self-organized health commons. And so it needed the public sector to make it a public right? And then they took it over as a state function. And I think what we do now, what we would look at now is actually keep it as a public right, but look at new forms of governance that are not top-down and bureaucratic forms. And I think that the methods of the Bologna regulation with their quintuple helix multi-governance structures are really something that we have to look into as something that needs to be generalized as a structural issue. Now, the second issue I'd like to reflect on is, and this is an issue of a value regime, right? Where how do you create wealth in this society? Well, we create wealth by extracting wealth from people or nature. And that's how we become rich. And then we pay taxes, and that is then redistributed. But what is missing in our society is any direct recognition of contributive value, right? So when Professor Pike says that the social care is not recognized, that's because contributive value is not recognized. Only commodity value is recognized. And so as long as we stay in that paradigm, the commoners who are effectively solving all these issues will depend on handouts either from the state or from philanthropy. And I think this is something we need to tackle. So we need to really look at funding mechanisms that go straight into recognizing contributive value. Now, I can't remember if it was Kes, I think, that mentioned the SDGs, right? And so yeah, you might be aware of the common good accounting system, which I think is brilliant because it translates the 17 clusters into indicators. And some city in Belgium, I don't know how far they are with the project, and it might even have been abandoned. But anyway, so last year they were really talking about this, was to use the common good accounting as a judgment to support investments. So in other words, the whole incentive structure would change, and cities and governments that have investment policies would invest according not to a purely financial criteria, but would take this holistic judgment. And I think this is a very interesting approach because basically what we're doing is by incentivizing different behavior, we are inviting all the institutions to adapt themselves so that they can reach these incentives, right? So I think this is a very powerful way of attracting institutional reform from the inside out. I think this is potentially really important. And of course, that requires the public sector to use that as a carrot, to move into that direction. Just maybe a very short remark about my own situation here in Chiang Mai. So we're not too far from Bali, and there was a Belgian economist, Bernard Lietard, who wrote a fantastic book called The Mystery of Money. And he was very strong on stressing that every pre-capitalist society had a dual value regime. In other words, there was the money of the king, which was basically needed to defend the country and finance the armies and these kinds of things. But also, for example, in Bali, the watershed has its own currency. So there was at the same time the extractive currency, but there was also the contributory currency. He called it the yin and the yang currencies. And so really, I think this is important that we start experimenting again with systems that recognize this other kind of value. Now, just to give you one element, Terre des Liens, which is, Earth of Links, Earth of Connections, is the largest community land trust in France. Already in 2016, calculated that their organic farmers who don't use pesticides save the state 350 million euro per year, right? So this is the kind of thing we have to look for. We have to look for positive externalities and create positive feedback loops between all the people, institutions that profit from these feedback loops, and say, well, can't you share a little, 20, 40% of what you're gaining to create these virtuous loops? So that, in my view, would be another interesting structural intervention. Two more things, not too long. And maybe it's something I will talk in the panel as well, but I'll just want to anticipate here. So one of the things that COVID creates is a counter-cyclical initiatives, right? So for example, a lot of people would be now questioning Airbnb and Uber because they have a lot of negative externalities. And the first thing that the people think of, cities are coalescing to police them and regulate them. But I think we need to go a step further, which is we actually have to support the alternative, the generative, positive externalities alternatives. And in that context, it would be extremely unwise, I think, for every single city in the world to build its own answer. Yes, context matters. Yes, diversity matters, but there is a lot of common stuff that will be needed. And so this is my plea to create protocol cooperatives, global open design depositories, where all the main functions of the city, like mutualizing habitat, mutualizing transport, mutualizing this and that cities would basically create leagues of cities, connecting with ethical finance, with the solidarity and the cooperative economy, and creating, institutional coalitions that would mutualize at the global level the common infrastructure, which, like open source, can then be used and changed and adapted to local situations. So I think this is something that needs to be looked at, and I believe, if I'm not wrong, that Barcelona, Amsterdam have actually tried to create this for housing. So there's some kind of cooperation going on around cooperative housing, which I think is a very good. Okay, last thing I wanted to say, Neil. I was talking. I was talking recently with John Takara, who is a very interesting global sustainable designer researcher, and to another person in Drenthe in the Netherlands, and he was telling me, I think this is important. So people are not just mutualizing anymore; they are actually creating common ownership, right? So it's hard to translate. In Dutch, it means herenboeren, but it's not just collective purchasing of food. It's actually now consumers in the Netherlands are buying farms together. I think this is a very important step, right? We need property. We just can't, stay weak and fragmented. And it's so if you talk to the Park Slope Food Co-op in Brooklyn, they say the only reason they survived is because they owned their place. Otherwise, gentrification would have priced them out. So I think this is a very important step from just like doing things together to actually creating a capital base that can withstand these kinds of pressures. And finally, John Takara was telling me about this movement, which I found absolutely fascinating, which is called Factor 20 reduction. And so these are people all over the world who are connecting to maintain complex social systems, complex public services, and to operate them at 5% of the matter energy level than they are today. Now, it sounds very utopian, but think about the figure that Neil gave in the beginning about shared cars, where every shared car actually replaces 9 to 13 private cars. That's an enormous saving in thermodynamic matter energy costs. So reducing the material footprint is, I think, where we need to go. We need to look at every provisioning system. And we need to say, okay, can we keep this complex system going in an era where we will have more and more resource shortages. And so one example, and this is the closing he gave, was that he claims that there's studies that show that commercial goods, transportation of commercial goods in cities can be reduced by 98% of energy usage by using cargo bikes and pedelecs, the electric bikes or tripods. If this is true, and I have no reason to believe it's not true, think about all these potentials that are going to be there, that we can lower our footprint and at the same time keep a complex and modern society going with all these essential services. So, and that needs a commons, right? The commons is this institution that does that. It's not a market, it's not a state, it's a coalition between the commons as a recognized human institution and finding optimal cooperation protocols with generative markets and enabling state forms. This is, I think, the structural change that we need. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, thank you, Michel. And now we're going to hear from Mayo Fuster-Morel about democratic qualities and gender equality in sharing practices and policies. Yeah, go ahead, Mayo, please.
Hello from Barcelona. First, I would like to give thanks to the organization for organizing all the event and inviting me to participate. I remember in September 2019 that the Barcelona delegation went to Seoul after Barcelona organized the Sharing City Summit in 2018 in order to suggest Seoul to take the lead of Barcelona, and out of it, here we are today. We have been finding many challenges with COVID and everything that happened, but it's fantastic that still we are being able to be here today and the event is taking place. No? And it's taking place not in any moment. It's taking place during the week of that us is celebrating the 25th of November, which is the International Day to fight against violence against women and girls. And this is not a particular coincidence. In the sense that if we want to think what to do, what actions take from the COVID situation, the element that with the COVID and the confinements and the lock it down at home, what we have been seeing is an exponential increase of violence against women. So this is a major issue that we are handling today. So I will do my comments from this optic, and which will mainly reinforce the contribution from PIPE that also bring into the element of care and gender perspectives. So regarding what to do after COVID and regarding sharing cities, my main point is going to be this one: the necessity to incorporate gender perspective and to cross the work with feminist theory and the feminist movement, both from the perspective of the challenges of the, as I say, the increase of violence against women, the increase of inequality, gender inequalities and inclusion generally, but also from the perspective of opportunities. Feminism can be a way of going out and a way of empowerment for this movement, because now at the global level there has been mainly two issues that are more active. One is on climate change, that also it's about putting life into the center and bringing the importance of nature, which connect very much with feminist principles. And the other global movement that now is very active is the fourth wave of feminism. So again, both from the perspective of the challenge of the problematic, but also on the perspective of the opportunities that feminism might bring, I think it's central that we incorporate a gender perspective, a feminist theory into the rethinking of the sharing cities. I'm going to do this from a review, like also from our own analysis from the Sharing City Action experience, but also I am a researcher, and as a director of Demons, we did a review of the studies and the current work that has been developed, and we built a database of 500 articles, main articles, that has been trying to do this, has been trying to incorporate a gender perspective of feminist theory into sharing commons and digital economy largely. And from this review of these 500 articles, what we extract is that first, that there was in the 2000, there was a first wave of feminist theory review of technology, not necessarily sharing practices, but more technology broadly, which point about that technology is not neutral. Technology also technology has a gender, and also reproduce a gender dynamics. And that's something we have to have also present. And not only technology as such, but also the culture around the use of technology, the sharing culture, the collaboration culture. Also collaboration can be a source of, also collaboration or sharing can be not gender neutral, can also reinforce gender inequalities. No? Then also from this first wave of studies from feminist theory into the review of technology, it emerged how technology has an open methodologies dynamics has not only reinforced existing sources of inequalities or existing sources of discrimination and abuse over women, but has also created new ones, has been very creative in creating new ones, like digital type of violence that we have been seeing now in social networks or in other forms. No? Generally, the conclusion of this first wave was that technology is actually reinforcing gender, the adoption of technology is reinforcing gender inequalities. No? A second wave of analysis that wanted to incorporate a feminist perspective into these issues came from not the feminist theory generally as a critical theory, but came from the feminist economics. That is economics analysis based on feminists, and from this perspective, it has bring about the importance of not only analyzing the production model and how commons can be, in this case, a production model, but also to, in parallel, analyze the reproduction model and how both of them relate into it, no? And the necessity to incorporate social reproduction into analysis, care, as Pedro had also been saying. Last, there has been a more recent wave of studies from social science, from a plurality of studies, sociology, political science, that has been have been doing an analysis, but mainly regarding the participation of women or the ratios of women or men participation, but this is a very basic analysis about gender, only regarding percentage of participation, but not going more into elements like feminist economy provide previously, like this question of how far is the relationship between social reproduction and production, or how far technology is reproducing other sources of inequalities. No? Having said that, I think this element of the lack of gender and feminist crossing of into this area, I would point it also that this refer also particularly to the commons theory. There has been a very few involvement of feminist analytics and feminist theory generally into the commons theory. There are some exemptions like Tiziana Terranova and other Italian contributions, but that's the current state of the crossing of both commons, feminism, and general sharing and digital culture. Having said that, I think it's important. Having said that, regarding which is the state of the art and which is the state of the studies and the analysis, I would provide some insights about how to approach it in order to move forward into incorporating a gender perspective and a feminist perspective. No? The first element is that I think it's important to have an intersectional approach, in the sense of looking into how gender operate and how patriarchy as a system and how gender as a category operate. But it's important to intersect it and analyze how it relates to other sources of domination and exploitation, like class, origin, racism, and colonialism, or functional diversity. Like when incorporating a gender perspective, is important again to incorporate an intersectional one into considering how gender inequality also relates to these other sources of exploitation and domination. Then I would differentiate or I would make three levels of analysis. One is regarding the incorporation of gender perspective and feminist theory into the sharing economy, like into economy, then into policy, and then into civil society. Regarding the first one, no? Regarding the economy, here we have been seeing how the platform or sharing economy as the mode of production based on the production and consumption by a community of people supported by a digital platform it was already before the COVID being spread, and it was the emerging mode of production. It was not like a sector, it's actually a mode of production that is going to be the dominant one into this century. But what we have been seeing is that COVID has actually accelerated that. So we were already in this process of transition that was moving from the factory as the central reference of production in the industrial era in previous century into the platforms as the main reference of production into the digital era in the 21st century. No? So we were in this transition, and COVID has accelerated that. And this has made that it has resulted, for example, on the generalization of the work being developed from home. And this has created has had a set of impacts. No, one is the stressing even more the care crisis. In terms of, it has reinforced even more the unequal distribution of care work and the unequal distribution in terms of gender of reproduction work. Now, after COVID, the data that is available in most of the countries point that how, this is also Pate has presented, has made that women now are doing much more work than previous to COVID regarding care and social reproduction. Second, there has been also an increase of the precarization of work conditions by women and the confination of women working from home in precarity work instead of more stable kind of work. No? There has been also, as I say at the beginning, an increase of the violence against gender violence in the domestic context. No? And this can result in an historical going back of a woman's right. I mean, it's not a minor issue. It's not just we were moving forward. There has been an exponential change, no, into reinforcement these problematics. What we have from the studies of, for example, Julie Scott, is that in terms of platform economy, it has been identified how there is machist or racist algorithms operating in the platforms that reinforce this gender discrimination by women in the digital economy. there has been also identified by Juliette Scott and other scholars about how there is a gender segregation by platforms in the same sector, like in the same sector of activity, some platforms that in which there is more integrated the women instead of other platforms more integrating men, or in roles. For example, those who provide the service to the platform in contraposition to those who actually buy or take the service, or receive the service. There is also segregation by sectors, and this in gender segregation by sectors of the platform and sharing economy. And here we see how, for example, in mobility, riders or taxi services, like cases like Uber, in this there is a predominance of men, and there are other sectors that actually has less visibility in general when we talk about platform economy. And it's important also to put into the table when analyzing the phenomenon is in the sectors of care. There is a growing expansion of platform economy in care services, but also in mainly performed by women. But also there is an increase of platform economy in sexual work. And that's our sectors of the sharing and platform economy that are important also to make present when we reflect about the phenomenon.
Hey, Maya. Maya, yeah, we're at about 14 minutes and only about 7 minutes left. Do you want to make a wrap up?
Okay. I would say that there is also important that we have present that the gender problematic apply to both models, both the extractionist model or the more capitalist one, but also to the commons model that has been presented. As it's important to have present that there are alternative models, more social, more commons oriented, but they also perform very badly in terms of gender. So we have to, it's important in terms of policies that the cities have present this problematic. It's important to reinforce the city-to-city coordination, and the Sharing Cities declaration from Barcelona. It points as one of the principles is this element of gender and inclusion. So it would be very good that out of the Seoul, we reinforce the collaboration between cities in order to provide policies that reinforce this or confront this problematic. Collaboration between Amsterdam and New York and Barcelona as previous organized summit, and also cities from Sweden and Seoul in order to reinforce the coordination between the city councils in order to together share experiences, but particularly take common actions, because I agree with Case that is the moment of act, is the moment in which to act as if the house it would be on fire, in the sense of we need less narrative, we need less nice histories, and we need more decisions, and we need more resources from city councils in this. And finally, just in terms of civil society, again, here we have a moment of opportunity, because there is the global wave of feminists, and there is a particular digital feminist wave very active, in which it can be very good to connect with. And that's it. Thank you very much again for the organization.
Thank you, Maya. Really appreciate it. Now we're going to head into our Q&A session, and we'll, if you can stay, we're going to go over time, 20 or 30 minutes. If you can hang with us, great. If you have to drop, I understand. Just want to make a couple of observations. I really love the commentary. I felt like it was very grounding, some foundational ideas here. Professor Back, said the commons are needed to make sure that healthcare gets to everyone, that women need to be recognized, their care labor and properly valued, that mega cities are not self-sufficient, so there needs to be better regional and transnational kind of collaboration and integration. Kes talk about foundational, talk about who the city is for, and really, constantly querying that and keeping that in mind as we make our plans. Michelle talked about the need for, in this transition from sharing cities to urban commons, structural supports to make this possible for it to scale, and how that actually has the potential to radically drop our footprint while serving and maintaining a kind of complex society. And Mayo talking about the again, the role of women, how it needs to be revalued, rethought, and reconsidered in technology, in the sharing economy, in the economy in general. With that, let's get into the Q&A part. And just to open it up, I wanted to ask our panelists what you think the next steps in the development of this proposal should be. And then we also, after that, we have some questions coming from the YouTube channel. So who would like to make a stab at that question? Don't be shy. What's the next step we should take, guys and gals? And the proposal of this, with this proposal we've been working on for the last month or so.
I think it would be good to organize a meeting between representatives from New York, Amsterdam, Barcelona, Seoul, and Sharing City, Sweden.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. Cass, you have something?
Yeah, no, I can jump in. I mean, I do think it's very valuable to bring together different groups and develop proposals and strategies and so on, like's being suggested. I can say, though, we do develop a lot of proposals and a lot of strategies over time. And so I think it's important to think very clearly, like, who's the audience? Who are we talking to? What exactly do we want to say to that audience? And what do we want that audience to do with that information? I think that's really fundamental. And I think here a lot of work that we're doing now and so on is around different kinds of ways of thinking about shaping the future. Anything from the missions approach, so thinking of our work as a mission, like a mission to the moon, to things like urban living labs, thinking of the city as a space for experiments and creativity, and so on. And I think it's really valuable to think about those different approaches. How do we think we're going to change the world is a fairly valuable discussion point to have in such a document, I think. But I do applaud the work, and I do think it has real value. I just think we need to be a bit tough on ourselves when we develop such documents and so on, and demand so that we answer some hard questions.
Yeah, thank you, Kes. Is Lee Sin Wan still on with us?
Can you hear me?
Okay, he might have stepped out. Yeah, he's there in the audience. I see.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I can speak in Korean, and then you can be translated. 오늘 굉장히 많은 이야기들을 들었습니다. 제가 사실은 그 글로벌 협력을 위한
I have been able to hear a lot of recommendations and opinions related to our future, especially for Seoul proposal. And now I believe that I am at the dilemma point. It's even more so than before, because I can see that I believe that we need to deal with even more, and we have much more to cover now. And there are a lot of examples, and also before we talked about a lot of abstract kind of concepts, but today we talk about gender, we talk about care, we talk about accounting that needs to be in place. So we're talking about very comprehensive kind of context to do that. And we need to start having very serious conversation related to that. When it comes to commons and when it comes to sharing, it is not just handled by two major forces of the market and the government. I believe that we need a paradigm shift into having and inviting this third axis in this paradigm. And I believe that there are two things. First, in our Seoul proposal, we cannot incorporate everything into this proposal. However, I believe that we have to revisit our our process of getting to our proposal. We have to think about the process, and when it comes to that, I believe it can be some kind of indexing or archiving or mapping kind of a work to be in place. By doing so, I believe that we can have a better understanding of each other and better understanding of conflict or potential conflict there is. And if we can identify more opportunities in the process of getting there, then I believe that in drafting our Seoul proposal, we will be able to see what should be the direction for our dialogue. And I believe that we will be able to find what should be the application areas. And if next year, if we can hold Sharing City Summit, then I believe that we will be able to deal with our proposal much more in in-depth ways. And not just us, but also the cooperation from civil society is needed, and they should be engaging in our Sharing City Summit. Of course, we need cooperation and consultation as well as consensus from cities and the city government. However, at the end of the day, I believe that we need to set up a steering committee to provide our recommendations, and I believe that it is part of our missions to do.
Thank you, Lee Sin-Wan. Yes, we have some work to do, I guess, right? Yeah, anyone else want to add to that about next steps for the proposal? Yeah, Michelle, go ahead. Unmute. There you go.
So I can't remember everything that was on the document. I went through it some days ago, but I just want to mention a project which I think is the kind of thing that we need as well. So in France, as you maybe know, there's 26 regions, and they created the 27th region, and the 27th region is a learning commons for these functionaries that work in the 26 regions. And this year they started a 3-year program about creating a legal order for the commons. And I think this is so important. So this is not just about policy, doing this or that. This is about like really thinking through what is the ideal legal framework in which the commons can thrive. Of course, it's done within one legal region, which is the French Napoleonic legal tradition. But I still think this is a very important thing. And in the US, General Orsi is doing this to a certain degree with the Sustainable Economics Law Center. So basically, what I'm trying to say is we have to go to structural things, not just like the foam. And supporting this or that initiative, but I'm really looking at the conditions that govern the emergence of this kind of social autonomy, and so I think this is going beyond the trivial and just kind of noting that people are sharing to looking at how do we do this structurally. And I mean, you have so many cities in your network, so I don't see why this couldn't be done. You have, it's just one more step in the seriousness of the project, I would say.
Great, yeah, thank you, Michelle. Yeah, Oksana, did you have something?
Yes, Neil, I was thinking about, and I really second to Michelle's view, that we cannot deal with commons or the sharing economy just talking about concepts. We need to hit the hard, big questions, the macroeconomic questions of economic growth. How does the commons economy relate to it, contributing, undermining? We need alternative scenarios. We cannot talk to legislators, Michelle, or to cities who are responsible for providing infrastructure without giving them solid pictures, solid scenarios, solid models that show the value of alternative, the potential in terms of size, in terms of providing the alternative or a support to the welfare systems that are sort of malfunctioning now. So, and here I would like, of course, I'm a researcher, but would like to highlight the importance of research we do. We are starting to address the importance of measuring and developing indexes where we in Lund have something to contribute to, but also running the macroeconomic models and visionaries, imaginaries of how this can be done, both for infrastructure, legislation, and the institutions at large. So very important work and lots to do, as you were saying.
Yeah, thank you, Oksana. Yeah, let's go to some questions. Oh, Harbin, yes.
Yeah, just to add to everyone's great opinions and ideas, and of course this is pressing as to the little time that we have on the clock and the challenges that we have at hand. But I think that we see really like a spectrum of perspectives and a spectrum of ideas and of cultural backgrounds, different areas in the world that we live and work, which is always very interesting, but also very hard to bring that together. I think we need focus, and perhaps it could be an idea, and it sounds simple, I know, to stick to our own areas of expertise and also maybe our own ecosystem, so to say, and form focus groups and just say, okay, everybody brings different elements to the table. And, you know, that's also maybe the metaphor of a city. A city is very diverse and has different backgrounds. The same goes for this group. So I would recommend to say, choose your own focus areas, stick to those and bring them periodically together, but maybe not try to morph it all into one thing. Because if I would think of having the challenge of defining a sharing city, I think we already need 2 days. And that's an interesting take maybe. So, and in the meantime, for us as the Sharing Cities Alliance, we'll continue just working with our partners, which is like Amsterdam and New York, Malmö, Cape Town, Singapore, Washington, DC, etc. And of course, with people here in this session, everything that we can bring with our work to our communal work, we'll do that with pleasure, but we also, I think, really need to focus, especially in this time when there are so many other challenges also in our work and in our cities. And thanks again, before we end the session already, for all the effort that has been done by the city of Seoul. So thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, thanks, Harman. Yeah, let's go to some questions from YouTube. Yeah, to Cass. From your experience, is there a place for urban living labs, urban experiments going forward, especially with the pandemic? How can they be incorporated in the Global South?
Oof, good question. Absolutely. I mean, I can say that Yulia and I have worked significantly with Urban Living Labs in several projects. I mean, Urban Living Labs are about experimentation in cities and about the idea of creating spaces or sites where we can test things out, kind of protected spaces where we can take our visions of the future but make them into a reality. And they could be something as simple as potentially, you know, taking a street in a city and closing it off the cars, you know, covering it with chairs and some grass and plants and so on, and letting people experience what the city would be like if there wasn't cars running down all their streets. Or it can be something far more permanent, perhaps like in Malmö, where you might take a district or districts have been taken and they've worked to create them to be 100% renewable energy or things like that. And of course, we can use experimentation in sharing as well and all the things we've been talking about today. I think like some critique of experimentation has been that it slows us down and that we need to act faster. I would say the complete opposite. Experimentation allows us to see the future, but in today, basically. It allows us to take our ideas about the future and put them into a reality. And I think that can fast track decision makers and investment and so on. I think that when people experience a different kind of city, they will quickly jump on board the sustainable city, but it's a pretty fantastic place to live. In terms of it's certainly Urban Living Labs in terms of the Global North or Global South. I mean, Urban Living Labs have been adopted heavily in the Global North or in Europe and Scandinavian countries and so on. So it does lend lend itself to those kind of contexts, but absolutely it can work just as well in the global south and in fast developing countries where there's just so many things happening. It can be a way to test things out. And it is being used, I should say, in many parts of the world, just not under the name of urban living labs. So yeah, I think it has a bright future, urban experimentation.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you, Cass. Yeah, Julia.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. And on that point also about urban living labs, one of the key components in urban living labs is the collaborative element, and that different actors get to come together to create knowledge and also to learn. So in a way, in cities, we have been building a lot of knowledge, and it's not about only knowledge institutes and academia, but also municipalities and organizations and civil society. But it is, what Cass was also pointing out before, we have this knowledge, but do we actually learn, and how do we learn? These urban living labs, they are constellations of various sectors. They are transdisciplinary, so they come across various sectors coming together, where this active learning is kind of pursued, and where the knowledge can actually be mobilized. So this is something what we also need to advance sharing cities to, or to build more resilient sharing cities to mobilize the knowledge that we have, and that is only possible when we have these transdisciplinary teams working together. So sharing cities, for example, is not anymore about just the mayors or deputy mayors getting together to an event and sharing their experiences. It is about engaging all kinds of actors with their expertise and their niche or broader expertise, what Harman was pointing out, together. It should be academia, and it should be municipal representatives and policymakers and community groups and businesses, because that's the way to move forward. This is something that can be done in an urban living lab experimental phase, but this is also the principle for making a change and difference, and to actually mobilize the knowledge that we already have, not necessarily create new, but mobilize it.
Yeah, thank you, Julia. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. And in fact, over the last 10 years, just seeing how so many different actors have entered the field, a real ecosystem has emerged and developing. And yeah, Maya, you had a comment too.
So I already mentioned this element that I think it's it's important to establish dialogue and common actions between sharing cities and city councils, no? As I say, like organizing a meeting between the cities and has been involved into promoting sharing cities summit, and this is something we have been working through the sharing city action. But I would highlight that there is a European kind of energy now more here, in the sense of there is a set of opportunities for collaboration between cities and lobbying together to the European Commission that is concentrating some of the energy, also through the Committee of Regions. Then I totally agree about the importance of research. In this regard, we just submitted the creation of a cost network of research sector, but as Julia has said, not only research with 100 partners, not only partners from research institutions, expert on sharing and expert on sharing economy, but also civil society and the involvement of cities, no? Then I would say that from Barcelona, there are two areas that we are being focused now, in which it could be a source of interaction and collaboration and focus, as Harmen has said. One is on food, as Álvaro Porro has said. Barcelona is going to be the capital of food sovereignty, and is going to host the mayor meeting on this. So in preparation of that, we have a special program, an action research program on food sharing. So we are focusing into this area and working into this area and building also a European project into this, which would be a good opportunity for collaboration. And the second area in which Barcelona's city, also with us, with WOC, is doing focusing the effort is on economical impulse. So we just launched a digital match impulse program that is based to facilitate support up to 100 social economy enterprises in the city in order to digitalize and platformalize his economical model. So very much focused into economic promotion and training and digitalization for the social economy here to become a platform social economy.
Thank you, Mayo. We've got some more questions from YouTube, but I wanted to first say, anyone, if you have any questions, put it in the chat. If there's already some good chat happening, you guys are sharing links about all your projects and everything. That's great. This is the time to share even more. Get your links, your research, your projects in the chat. That'll all be saved. Before I go to more YouTube questions, I just wanted to ask if any of the panelists have a question for another panelist. I get some smiles, I get some grins, but any questions? All right, you guys think about it. We'll go to the YouTube questions. Okay, how about school? What about the role? How will the role of school change in sharing cities? Would schools be a platform to provide commons?
Yeah, well, I would think so, if I may. I mean, I was just cleaning out a closet earlier this week, and I found literally on a pizza box an idea that I had with my wife together years ago, I think 6 years ago, about like a school community plan. I mean, if you look at it, a school is already a place where a lot comes together. You know, it's of course knowledge, it's education, but it's also the parents discussing a lot of different topics together. I think you can have so many different possibilities to bring in more the concept of commons or sharing or whatever title you want to give it to schools, and especially have this opportunity to bring this to the level of children at this age already. So, when I was talking about this little sort of library, the sharing little home that we have in front of our house, and many of you already know that example by now, but it's literally something that my kids got in their system, so to say, already from very early on. And I think that is a great opportunity. We all, and of course we differ in age here in this session, but we all maybe had to learn it a bit more along the way or experience it through the knowledge that we are gathering. But I think if you start soon in the life of a kid, then it will just be part of their lives. And that's if you do that with a whole generation, then look one generation further, and you might as well have a much better world in the sense of the uptakes of sharing. So I would indeed say that a school is a great platform, both physical as well as also, of course, online maybe, because of course schools are also more and more digital, to bring that across and let the children sort of blossom because of sharing.
Yeah, thanks, Harman. Just quick comment before I go to Kes and Michelle. They had some to share too. Is just I've always thought that elementary schools could be excellent kind of platforms for sharing because of just how they're so evenly distributed, at the neighborhood scale, and that they could engage parents, and that there's a lot of material that a lot of consumption with kids, toys, books, clothes, that get used or that you run through, at different ages. You have different sets of belongings. With that, Kes, you had something to add?
Yeah, I can jump in again. I mean, I think that schools and the sharing economy. I mean, also physically speaking, schools and the buildings and the space that they take up. I mean, you can do a lot of sharing of space in relation to schools, and this is apparent kind of in Sweden for sure. I mean, that certainly is a very practical way you can use schools. But of course, the far more powerful way is that schools are the places of education for our young people and going forwards. And I mean, in Swedish schools, there's no doubt there is teaching about sustainability, and I think sharing might creep in there in different ways. Certainly recycling teaching is taught to the Swedish kids as they grow up, so they're indoctrinated into recycling. But I also think that the food they eat in Swedish schools, it's healthy food. It's an attempt at being climate-friendly food. They try to push towards vegetarianism in a number of schools. And I mean, so schools are a very, very powerful mechanism for shaping the future. But I would actually take it a step further, because I actually think our universities, the places where many of us work, are in fact not the best role models of how to organise for the future. Universities preach a lot of things, but if you look at the organisation of universities and some of the things we're doing, we're not so great on our environmental and social impacts. And this is a space where I think we could be dramatically better, because at universities we really are educating and shaping some rather future leaders, powerful leaders going forward in the future. So I think that's another space we should be thinking about.
Yeah, thanks, Cass. Michelle, did you have a quick comment? Mute.
All right. Yeah, just quickly, I did a study in Ghent in 2016, mapping urban commons and the involvement of stakeholders. And one thing was very clear, that the university was absolutely not integrated in the urban commons world. They just weren't there. So in Belgium, we have these non-university higher education. They were there. Like, they had all kinds of researchers and activists, but the university was just completely self-enclosed, and that, that has to change. That is really not the way forward.
All right. Let's see. No more questions at YouTube at the moment. Do any of our panelists have questions for other panelists?
한국 유튜브에서 질문이 하나 나왔어요.
Well, we received a question from YouTube Korea, on YouTube channel from Korean audience.
공유 도시의 필수적인 사항들이
So if you think about the essential factors of sharing cities, I mean, it's related to climate change, non-use of plastic products, and gender understanding. And when you think about all these requirements for sharing cities, what do you think is the role that has to be taken by us?
이게 좀 큰 주제이긴 합니다.
I think it is a big question. I know it's very broad, but if you think about the requirement for sharing cities,
굉장히 큰 주제를 말씀을 했는데 이것을 하기
so in order to achieve sharing society, what has to be done from us? Of course, for us, we are talking about making indexes and making measurements and indicators. However, when we think about this topic, as Harman already said, we have a lot of people coming from the government side and private businesses and other institutions as well. And, well, when we deal with the topic of sharing cities, sometimes it gets almost like encyclopedia. And if that is the case, and if we talk about things too broad, then we can't take a decision. If it is too many, then we can't really make a decision. Therefore, I believe that we need to have a focus in our group discussion. And when it comes to the word movement, I believe that movement is very important. When we think about sharing city, I believe it is not just a domain of the government, or it is not a domain of civil society. I believe that there should be a lot of stakeholders to move forward with this kind of a movement. And in order for sharing movement to continue, the collaboration from the government is important. However, as you can see, they are on the shaky ground, more or less, because if there is a power shift taking place, then those sharing policies may be alterated when there is a change of power taking place. Therefore, I believe that sharing city concept should not be controlled only by the force of the government. It can be very risky. Therefore, in order to have more sustainable sharing city, then I believe that the civil society activists as well as the researchers have to take the lead in collaboration with the help of movement. And also, like Maya said before, if you think about the cities of Barcelona, Malmö, Amsterdam, and Seoul, the city government have to come up with their own council of collaboration, and the researchers also have to come up with the right agenda and mission to be dealt with, and we need to deliver it to the government track of discussion council so that we can find ways to move forward with the drafting of our proposal. So that has been my thought.
Thank you, Lee Sin-wan. Anyone want to react to that? Michelle, you're unmuted. Do you have something to add?
Oh, well, I'm not sure what the question was because it was very long. Yeah, maybe I want to mention an idea. So I have big problems also with procurement as it exists, because it's a winner-take-all, mechanism where you're actually obliged to create externalities in order to gain the contract. And so in Ghent, I noticed one really important innovation, which we call the call for common. And I've now seen that 15 cities in France have taken that idea over. And so I want to briefly share it because it's a really good way to involve everyone. And so call for common is a budget that doesn't go for the best company, with the cheapest product, but it goes to the coalition that is best able to coalesce people from the civil society, the NGOs, the citizen groups. And so that's, I think, something to think about. Is another way, to create relationships between the city and the citizens, because it's non-competitive, right? The people who get it are the most cooperative. And it has to be based on a coalition building between all the different, sectors of society. So I think that's worth looking into as a strategic move, also to, get more involvement.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. And we're almost at the half hour. It's time to wrap up. I got a question from Harmon, and I'll answer it as a way to get to the ending here. And he asked about my experiences living locally this year during COVID-19. And I had, made this commitment to a life experiment before the pandemic in January, actually to live as locally as possible and see what I would learn, and I'm almost, through with the year, of course. And I've had some incredible experiences, a lot of surprises. One was when the pandemic hit, I connected with all my neighbors and we created a mutual aid network that was very, very active. And now I'm more connected with my neighbors than ever. And that's incredible, and a kind of change I believe that will stick. And we're sharing all kinds of resources, and it's nice to be able to do it here at home and also in work, so I would have do it more in my life, not just professionally speaking. I think the big insight that I had, though, that connects to what we're talking about here is that I got with this increased activity in civic life, I realized that I needed to do 5 or 10 times more, that the budget that we put in our lives towards maintaining our neighborhoods and our cities, our time budget, is totally inadequate. In the United States, time use surveys have showed that it's like 15 minutes a day, which is probably not even accurate. It's probably people are embarrassed to say that they don't do anything in their community, and so they put 15 minutes. And we need to be an hour a day, 2 hours a day, doing things in our community. And there, we have to think in terms of a kind of almost a civic tithe, that we're spending 10% of our free time, our non-sleeping, non-working, non-family time, or something like that, right? A big escalation. And I started to see citizenship in a much broader level, including like all these like sharing environmental action, social action as part of citizenship. So in any case, that was the big thing that I learned, and maybe something to think about as we think about moving this sharing cities forward. With that, I want to thank everyone for their contribution, and to close out, I want to introduce Zhang Sane, the General Director of Seoul Metropolitan Government's Innovation Department. She will give a short closing speech for the session. And just, thank you so much. What a rich discussion. I had high expectations and they were exceeded. So thanks. And please, Zhang Sane, please, let's hear from you.
네, 반갑습니다. 저는 서울시의
Yes, thank you very much. I have oversight over Seoul Metropolitan Government's innovation programs. Thank you very much. Some of you I'm seeing for the second time after May last year. I think COVID-19 actually, in that sense, presents us with a new opportunity. If we could travel under normal circumstances, I don't think we would have been able to see 2 times a year. The late Mayor Park Won-soon's passing was a reason why we could not go ahead with the global Sharing Cities Summit. But nonetheless, true and in keeping with the spirit of sharing, we wanted to continue his legacy, to go ahead and collect your input and insight into a set of proposals for Seoul. And we very much appreciate your engagement and interest. So we are, of course, taking part in what's called the Seoul Innovation Week conference. We started on the 25th. So the climate crisis, city in transition, and transitional economy, those are our large themes. In terms of transitioning our city, I think 3 key words were a recurring theme over the 2 days. One was, how can we achieve a net zero carbon emissions in all of our activities? And then how can we go beyond a circular economy to develop into a community-based circular economy? And third, how can we become more self-sufficient and increase our collaboration at the level of the community? I looked at the declaration and sharing. I think we said that was not the 4th principle. And over the last 2 days, many other participants also said commons or sharing is in fact the underlying principle of all of the other pillars that we talked about. So I very much appreciate all the interventions and the input that we had from everyone. And one of the presenters from yesterday said, we have to descend gracefully from the peaks of growth, and we have to really try to change our lives. And a city of proximity, where you can find everything you need within a 15 minutes walk. We have to put in place all of those necessary essential infrastructure. And I think we were reminded of the value of this kind of proximity and these kinds of values, thanks in part to COVID-19. And with your good ideas and with your proposals, of course, we are going to also provide some input from Seoul. Connection of knowledge, accumulation of know-how and experience. I think that we need this kind of open network, as you suggested. We already have what's called a sharing hub. It's an archiving exercise, and we are using it as a knowledge platform for spreading of knowledge. I think different cities and institutions will have something similar, like Share Anno. You have the common share network or shareables, and other cities probably have something similar related to the commons, some sort of a hub or archive. And I hope that they can be opened up and then connected in a more open way. And so I agree with that proposal. And second, Seoul Metropolitan Government, together, well, we have been providing support for sharing organizations and companies. One new thing this year is in alignment with the SDG goals, we actually have been developing a set of indexes to measure the SDG results of the enterprises. So how cooperative production and cooperative consumption is taking place, whether this business is sustainable within the bounds of the planetary resources, is it really contributing to enhanced quality of life and sustainability for the people? So we're starting measurement for evaluation purposes this year. I think the different case studies and experiences of the different cities, I think policy-wise, it's very important to make sure that your experience is factored into the index, to indexing. So how the different elements of comments have to be reflected, and how we can assess them, I think that is very important. So this year, next year, we're going to continue to mature our indexes, so that hopefully we can advance them into more of an advanced set of metrics on par with those that many of you probably already use. And then I think it was 2 days ago at one of the discussion sessions, we heard about the 15-minute city concept from Paris. And then, or in that session, there was some talk about drawing a self-portrait of the city. So in order for people to be really able to relate to the concept of sharing, I think we have to look at the level of the village or the community. Somewhere within 5 or 10 minutes from where we live, when we see something sharing at work and how that can enrich our lives and make us that much more happy, and I think that kind of model that shows the different possibilities to the citizens, I think is very important. The third cycle of the basic sharing plan is going to be launched, and we're going to test out what we think may be titled Sharing Village. So we have to work in smaller units. So I saw some blogs where you're trying out living in a remote village for a year, for example, that kind of experimentation. So I think it's time to think in smaller terms, what kind of differences sharing can make in daily living at the smaller neighborhood or sub-neighborhood level. So we're going to start trying to build up case studies with those types of experiments starting this year. Hopefully we'll be able to share those outcomes later on. And lastly, the Seoul Declaration, I think the meaning is multiple. If we had a proper summit, we would have been able to hear from more researchers, activists, and local governments. But we were not able to organize a summit. I think the draft declaration, actually, we have to make sure that it can be shared with as many people as possible. And we have to increase the visibility of our findings to as many cities around the world as possible. So we'll try to find a way to increase exposure, because who is interested in what, who is working with who, in what area. I think it's important to share everything so that everybody knows what the status is. So we want to fulfill our responsibility, and it's unfortunate that we're not able to organize a full-fledged summit. But nonetheless, today's forum was still very meaningful. I very much enjoyed meeting you as we prepared for this event and as we drafted the proposal together. I think the experience overall will remain a good legacy and a major asset. And hopefully we'll see you next year as well. Thank you very much.
Great. With that, thank you, everyone. Goodbye. We'll see you soon. Bye. And we're going to be working on this together.
Bye, everybody. Yeah, thanks for everything.
Thanks a lot, Neil. Great work.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Great work, guys.
Bye, Mayo. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Mayo, Oksana.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil.
Yes.